Your point, straight and simple. Good take. Well broken down and succinct. Yeah, that's not a thing I can do. But we're gonna give it a shot. I don't normally do response videos to things, especially to content creators specifically. But one of the elements of content creation is that it's designed to spark conversation. And Fluke on Blast sparked a conversation that I think is actually a really good one to talk about. And in his video, he shared some math on kind of organized play and what we're really asking for when we want LSS to expand on their organized play. And I'm actually really thankful he did that. I'm thankful that he dove into elements of it. But when it got to the math, it got a little bit fuzzy. So I wanted to expand on this. So if your thing is always going to put Fluke on blast, no, I want to expand a little bit. Kind of my insight as somebody who does work on the other side of the cardboard, working for Genesis, and kind of I have a little understanding what are relationships that can happen at Distro and costs and whatnot. But it's also I've put together a lot of events and I've put together some big marketing partnerships. I know I have a little kind of extra insight that I wanted to enhance this conversation a little bit. Because I'm thankful for it, but I also really want to acknowledge no, not every penny that goes into this stuff comes from boxes. So I want to pull back and I want to share a little bit more on that. One, yes, if you want more events, you do got to buy more. It helps for sure. But let's dive a little bit more. So we're going to put 15 on the clock this time. We're going to see if I can pull this off at 15. And I'm also probably not going to do this whole thing in one take. I've tried a couple times and I just can't. Just can't. So anyway, here we go. In the video, Fluke is basically responding to some Twitter concerns, some Twitter lashback of LSS putting out the Fab Premier play and the organized play. They announced 2 callings and 4, I think, well, maybe 6. What is it? 6 Battle Hardens that they announced. So far, more are coming. He says hey, we know the prize pool, we know the average prize pool, so we'll assume a $1 million cash prize, out of hand, out of pocket into their pockets, actual cash value, not perceived value, cash in hand, that out the door. Plus you consider everything else, and you consider things like event fees and cost of staff and judges and getting things out there and marketing materials and shipping those materials and all. You take everything into consideration. He put the total cost to LSS at about $1.5 to $2 million. I think it's a little closer to that 1.5 mil side. But at the end of the day, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. I think we're fairly close in certain elements. Where the money came from though got a little bit dicey. So that's where we're gonna go. So anyway, let's start by examining really quickly Calling Indianapolis. Calling Indianapolis, $20,000 prize pool. So one of the things that he discussed was, $50 a box towards Distro. If I wanted to pay USD $20,000 out of hand, it would cost, I as LSS would need to sell 400 boxes to basically just get that money, just have that so I can distribute out. That's kind of the math that he was kind of leveraging for this. I don't think it's just that. I'm actually very, very confident it's just that. So, and here's kind of the reason for that. First off, the thing that was the very big thing that was missed was the fact that there was in fact there was an entry fee for this. It was $70 to get into the Calling Indianapolis. 481 people showed up. That's a total of $33,670. There's your event fee. There's your prize pool covered right there. Don't even worry about those 400 boxes. And before we jump in and say well, what about the event fee and the staff and all those? It would probably accommodate that. The Calling Indianapolis was a part of SCG Con. It wasn't his own thing. It was, even the Calling in the first one in Vegas was a partnership with Channel Fireball. It is safe to assume, I think it's fairly safe to assume, that they didn't go to Channel Fireball and say, hey, can we use your staff and can we use you guys and your team and your understanding of all of these things so that way you guys can put on an event in Vegas. And Channel Fireball came back with a quote and said, here's what it would take to use every ounce of our resources as if you were just paying everything out of pocket. That's not how partnerships work. Because if that were the case, then you wouldn't have leveraged Channel Fireball. You would have leveraged a different event. You would have leveraged an actual event organization company specifically, because it would have been cheaper. It probably would have been cheaper. Ultimately, just doing it out of pocket, you wouldn't have had to worry about flying so many people out from even Chan or Fireball. You could have leveraged like a local event space to have put that on. So there's a partnership that is here that takes away a big bunch of the costs. Calling Indianapolis was a part of SCG Con Star City. And I feel this could have gone one of two ways, because whereas the event fee itself was $70, Star City got to charge $150 for packages that brought in promos and playmats and gave other things for showing up. And the fact that they were allowed to do that tells me that there was some sort of partnership that offset some of those costs. So as far as like the event rental fee, like I'm not paying for the entire space for one day, I'm paying for a section of that space. And maybe Star City was like, hey, we'll give you that, but in exchange, we get to sell packages through our site, and we get to ramp whatever we think is fair, which they added $80 to the normal calling event fee. And there are other elements that could have come into that as well. But, I feel there was a partnership that's like, hey, we'll offset a good chunk of this. But we get to also cover some of the elements of promotion, but we also get to charge, we get to charge a fee for us. Sorry, editing Joe, elephant in the room. I know that when it came to the 150, the extra $80, it did go to other packages or other things as well, like the dash and the playmats and the event vouchers and things like that. So it's not like they just milked $80 out of everybody else who participated in this. That's not exactly what happened, but it is safe to assume that $80, like the values they said of $35 value each and $20 value each, it's probably based off of what they expected the customer to have paid, like an LGS, and that could have included product or running some sort of side events that maybe didn't need product. So that 80, they still were able to make a profit. As far as the cost to them was a lot less than the 80, so they were still making profit off of selling bigger packages. But I didn't want it to make it seem like they just forced everybody to pay an extra $80 for this event. That's not what happened. They added to it, but they still profited. That's the end result here. That's the main takeaway. Sorry about that. And the nice thing about that to them, and why this is great, being attached to a convention, is that people who are playing in the Flesh and Blood calling don't just have to participate in the Flesh and Blood events. You can go to other elements of the con. So in a way, this is a partnership that Star City says, hey, we're going to get a lot of extra people who probably would not have come to our convention because they want to play in this, and they get to explore the rest of it, and hopefully they have a good enough time and a good enough experience that they look at other card game cons in the future. That's a good cross promotion strategy. So no doubt in my mind that elements of this were offset, and that's something that you can kind of safely assume for a lot of others. I'm not going to say every single one, because that would be a lie. Not every country, not every area of the world has a Star City Games or a Channel Fireball to do this kind of stuff. But let's appreciate that when it comes to these kind of big events, these massive ones, you can get yourself into partnerships where you don't have to look at this is how many boxes that we need to sell in order to do this. That's not really a thing. It goes a little bit deeper than that. So that's kind of one. So we look at the other Premier Play announcements, and you look at Antwerp and Birmingham, and I'm not sure what the partnerships are ultimately for these. So, but they usually will kind of announce a partner as well. So Tournament Center, what is Tournament Center? I'm just going to click on this is me clicking on Antwerp's. Tournament Center, this looks like a company. This doesn't look like a Flesh and Blood owned only thing. So Tournament Center seems to be the company that is running this specific calling, but they also run a bunch of other things. I'm looking at their main page. They got a Battle Spirit Saga event. They do Yu-Gi-Oh! They do Pokemon. They do a bunch of other things. So again, this is a cross-promotional partnership. I don't really think this is LSS saying, hey, can we use your team and we're going to pay every single cost of this? No, it's not a thing. And that's something that translates into other elements as well. So kind of the next stage of this is the concept of partnerships. Because one of the other things is go buy boxes, go to LGSs, go buy more sleeves, things like that. And again, it gets into that realm of, I don't necessarily think when it comes to, especially those really big ones, it's not just a matter of LSS saying, hey, can we get you guys to print stuff, and we're just going to pay for all that, and then we'll get some of the kickback from it. I'm not convinced, and I'll say this when I have no actual clue regarding what the partnership between LSS and Dragon Shield is, but I also feel I can say with confidence when it comes to just the standard idea of a licensing agreement, it's not always a matter of me, the publisher, goes to you, the creator of other things that I don't want to do myself, and says, I will give you money to print these, and then I'm going to give you the rights to print those, and then if you can sell them, that'd be great, and we'll get some of the money for that. That's like a direct order type of thing. If that were the case, I would probably be buying. I would buy in bulk from Dragon Shield, but then I would be probably selling those through direct, or I as LSS would be selling those through probably like Distro myself, and I would own all of that product. I'm pretty confident, like in case of Dragon Shield, there's a back and forth partnership where maybe it's even at a point where Dragon Shield is asking for the rights and they are paying LSS for the rights to put out X number of different card sleeves at a time. And through those various partnerships come those, like the tunics and the hearts, and those little special small versions of them. But again, that's another kind of source of revenue and another source of income. It's not just boxes. So with this, also want to talk kind of about the distro relationship. I want to talk about kind of two key ones, because if you come out, if we're going to play if we need to sell X number of boxes in order to accommodate this stuff, there's multiple relationships with Distro that get a little funky. So let's talk about two of them. The first one is the one where Distro specifically buys the product. So he says kind of at the beginning, like if LSS sells boxes to Distro at $50 a box, again, none of these numbers, like I have no clue what these actual numbers are. So that one's just a nice easy one to play with. If I'm selling at $50 a box, this can go one of two ways. Number one is Distro buys it at $50 a box. They are actively buying that product at $50 a box, and it is theirs to own. It is on that distro at that point to push it out and market it and get it out the door. There's some pros and cons to this. The pro out of the gate is that LSS gets the money. So when you're looking at like Monarch Unlimited and like 125,000 boxes, and you're like, wow, that was overprinted. At the end of the day, it was overprinted from the angle of, I feel it was overprinted from the angle of, wow, that was a lot. The customer demand didn't quite meet that. However, on the flip side of it, if they were sold to Distro, that's 125,000 boxes of sales that LSS actively made to Distro. Those sales were done. Those sales happened. That happened. And that leads to, again, good and bad things. Good, LSS has the money. Bad, Distro has control over the product. So you saw like the offloading from Card Shop Live at a time, and you saw like the bottlenecking of some of the unlimited product with Welcome to Wraith, and you saw some of that with like Monarch 1. Because if I bought the product for $50 and I know that thing is going to sell for like 2-3 times MSRP, I don't want to sell the LGSs at what my normal rate is, because they're going to make a heck of a lot more profit, and it's my product to own. So if I've got enough confidence saying like this is going to go to $300 as a distro, maybe I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait this one out. I'll hold that back. I'll allocate it poorly, keep some of it my own, and then put some of that back out in the world at an increased rate. So I'm making, instead of I'm guessing, I'm throwing numbers out. This is based off of zero actual anything, but the concept of I'm going to sell to LGSs at $70, $75 a box, but if I know you're going to make $300 as opposed to the normal MSRP of like $110, instead I'm going to hold some of this, and when it goes to $300, I'm going to sell it to those LGSs like $125 or $130. Like, I don't know how the relationship goes, but I do know that LGSs were complaining that Distro was just randomly increasing the price of boxes for things. They get to do that because, well, they own the product. And that's kind of like LSS was a little bit powerless to stop it in those kind of dark times. That's essentially kind of why. So LSS very likely like had the money from those sales. We were fine. That's also why like Magic the Gathering was able to say in their little fireside chat that went real well for them, we're not overprinting the product. Despite the fact that prices for boxes were tanking, and the player comfortability and even LGS comfortability made them not want to buy more boxes, Magic was in that moment saying, we don't have any problem having our print run sell to Distro. After that, it's on you. We're selling to Distro just fine, and Distro is buying it just fine, and that's essentially kind of what we have here. Selling it to Distro, that money's already there. So we can't exactly say as like, you need to buy up to 40,000 boxes in order to get organized play stuff to happen. No, that's not quite how that works. The other angle of this, the flip angle of this, is the consignment, is consignment. So consignment is I, the publisher, own all of my product. I'm going to send it to a distro. That distro is basically going to store it, but nobody makes a dime until that product sells. Like if you've ever been to into an antique shop, that is just like a bunch of little booths. That's a consignment store. Nobody makes a dime. Like, none of those little shops make a dime until something sells. The shop itself that is storing all of this stuff, they take a cut, and then the rest goes to the publisher. That is the other element that you can go. I don't think that LSS went there because there's a lot of product confidence in Flesh and Blood right now. And it also, you know, when you have investors and you have all these things, I don't think you need to go, because it's very safe for distro and it's very risky for the publisher to do, because the publisher owns all of that product. If it doesn't sell, they don't make a dime. They don't make a dime at all. So that's a much harder relationship, but that's another avenue you can go. And that's one where it'd be like, hey, you need to buy 40,000 boxes, because we don't make a dime until those actually sell to local game stores, not distro. Distro stores it, but it needs to go to local game stores and goes to everything else. That's consignment. That's consignment. That's the way that kind of consignment works. I don't really think it's that way. But the other, the kind of the big part of that, and the reason that, you know, you do kind of a distro thing, is that when it goes into growth, like what you want to do, the reason that you want to buy boxes and it's important to buy product from, ideally, like, we'll go with official sources. He uses the words official sources, but we'll go with sources that need to buy through distro, is because those sources, you know, like an LGS, when they run out of product, they buy more product from distro. When distro runs out of product, they either order more and you get another print run, or if anything, it tells those distros that the game is growing, it is selling very well, it's a good source of income for that distro. So when you get into future sets, like an Outsiders or something like that, when you get into those other sets, then chances are those distros are going to put in purchase orders for those sets. They're going to come right in and be like, when you print this, I want to buy 30,000 boxes because I feel through my LGSs and my partners, I'll be able to sell that. And that helps LSS get a better gauge for, this is how much we should probably print of this set, because we've got purchase orders for that. And that's another good way to get money kind of in before the thing actually even sells, putting product confidence into distro, so that way distro is giving you money early, saying, we want this when you print it. That's the circle of life, everybody. That's why that's a kind of a good idea. So that puts me pretty much just about the 15-minute mark for this. I had to stop the timer a couple times because this was a couple of takes, but I do want to do like a little 5-minute after this, so you're welcome to stick around. A little 5-minute kind of bonus episode of just my opinions and thoughts regarding kind of organized play, and you know, some of the advice given. So if you care, I'd love for you to stick around for just kind of 5 minutes more. But if not, well, that was cheers, everybody. All right. 5-minute bonus episode. Let's talk some like actual opinions here. So first thing, get out of the mindset that like the box that you buy from LGS is eventually going to is sending money to LSS, and that's how they're going to be able to fund things. They've already got they very likely already have money for not only what they paid for here, but even the print run for Outsiders, if not further down the road. I think this was something like MetaZoo maybe had like a multi-year deal or multi-set deal with some relationships, because you can get into that. Like I'm gonna guarantee I want XYZ rate on boxes. I'm going to guarantee XYZ amount of boxes for like the next 3-4 sets or whatever. You can do those types of deals. So LSS isn't exactly hurting for what's coming in. I would suggest, however, encourage sales. That's what I would ask for the community. Find ways to encourage further sales of product from those sources that would demand reordering. And things like that. That's a good strategy. That's a good strategy going forward. That's something that I can personally appreciate. I'm one of those of the mindset of like I would rather have 30 people buy 3 boxes than 10 people buy 10. And you know, it's like, that's a 10 box reduction. You don't know shit about business. Yeah, I would rather have 30 people with a comfortable barrier to entry, because it's going to be much more likely that they're going to be able to get others in, being able to enjoy the product at a smaller price point. Then I'm spending $1,000 every set. I have everything I need to be competitive, maybe sans a couple of cards that are going to cost $70, $80 anyway. It's hard to introduce new players. This is the struggle. This is the fab community kind of odd divide that's happening right now as we're starting to get into competitive seasons. And you know, I've been aggressive on the meta, not just because for me it's kind of a personally suck experience, and I play Azalea. I will admit that I'm making it harder for myself, but it's also a barrier to entry for new players to come in. If it's those same people who are like, you don't need Tunic to be competitive. Shut up. Just shut up. That's an element of tone deafness that boggles my damn mind, because you might as well just say, well, if you don't like Classic Constructed, you might as well just play Blitz. You can have just as much fun with Blitz, can't you? You're still playing Flesh and Blood. If you still like it's not about my one-to-one relationship with the product. It's about, I want to go out to a local game store, the kind of things that we keep promoting, right? And I am thinking about the experience that I'm having out there. And I'm thinking about the emotional investment that new players have, and even old players have, as they play this game, and as they see what they kind of are dealing with on a regular basis as they look out into the community. This is why I hate like ICE and I hate the current meta, and I don't care if anybody who says like you can find ways around it. It's not a matter of finding, and that way around it is usually like you play a different hero. I want to invest in like an Azalea, or I want to invest in a Brava. Like I want to invest in something. I don't want to have to be told like the meta really is so against this hero that you really should just kind of stop, just quit, just get good, do something different. You are coming after the emotional investment that people have, and fuck you, basically. Just screw you. You're not helping the conversation. So that's that element of it, of just like stop. Just stop. Encourage sales. Create an environment that encourages new people to want to come in. A lot of people are putting it on PvE. Like, okay, fine. You need to encourage the excitement of that are going to get people coming out and not having, it's like, we could play PvE. Or, you know, we got 8 of us. We might as well just do a Classic Constructed. Well, great. Me who wasn't ready for that. That's the problem. Doesn't encourage sales. That's how this goes downhill. The last element of it is really just kind of the disbursement of the callings. I do want to react a little bit to kind of some of the community dissent of you should be putting out more events. I'm going to go with kind of yes and no. Yeah, I think so, but like with callings specifically, I like the idea that callings kind of feel special, and there's only maybe 3, 4. I would honestly, I wish there was like maybe a max of 5 to 6 of them. Because eventually it just reaches a point where there's so many in such proximity that thrill and joy of coming out and seeing everybody who I haven't seen kind of goes away, because like I can just wait for the one that's like 2 months, and they just become like little regional events. And Battle Hardened already kind of covers that anyway. That's kind of what that seems to be gearing to. So I kind of don't want to see more. I don't want to see too many more callings, because I want that thrill. I want them to be scarce. I want to feel good. I want that feeling of excitement that comes from knowing like I saved up to go to this one. I can't wait to see people, as opposed to I'm just going to drive down the road. I'll wait for 2 months for the one that's going to happen down the road, and I know that next year I'm going to get another one that's kind of down the road, and there's no real reason to like travel and bring the worldwide community together. I like keeping the calling small. Add more battle hardings if you want more events.